Ever wonder how Amish families choose their daughters' names? It's not just picking something that sounds pretty. There's a whole secret system of timing, family traditions, and hidden meanings that most people never know about. These customs will surprise you. Special birthdays. The moment an Amish baby girl takes her first breath, ancient customs begin determining her name through timing patterns that most outsiders would never consider significant. Traditional naming customs consider the exact timing of birth, including day of week, season, and agricultural calendar significance that influences name selection through spiritual and practical considerations. Spring births might receive names connected to renewal and growth, while winter births get names reflecting endurance and faith. The hour of birth sometimes influences middle name choices, with dawn births receiving names that reference light or new beginnings within traditional religious frameworks. Family circles. Amish families follow specific naming patterns that honor deceased relatives while avoiding direct duplication that might seem prideful or create confusion within extended family networks that include multiple generations. Name rotation systems ensure that beloved family names continue through generations without appearing too frequently in the same time period. A grandmother's name might skip one generation before appearing again, modified slightly to honor the original while maintaining uniqueness within current family circles. Birth order often influences name selection, with first daughters sometimes receiving names from the mother's family line, while second daughters honor the father's heritage. These patterns maintain family connections while respecting both sides of extended family relationships and community traditions. Scripture stories. Scripture provides the primary source for Amish girls' names, but the selection process involves more than simply choosing favorite biblical characters or popular religious names from modern Christian traditions. Name selection emphasizes biblical women who demonstrated faith, endurance, and service to their communities, rather than those associated with worldly power or royal status that might conflict with humility values. Ruth, Mary, Rachel, and Sarah appear frequently because their biblical stories reflect qualities that Amish communities value in women. Less common biblical names receive consideration when they connect to specific family spiritual experiences or community events that created meaningful associations with particular scriptural passages. The selection process includes studying biblical contexts to ensure chosen names reflect appropriate spiritual qualities and community values rather than simply following popular naming trends or personal preferences that might conflict with traditional expectations. Nature's calendar. The season of birth influences name selection through connections between natural cycles and spiritual meanings that reflect traditional understanding of God's creation and divine timing in human life. Spring births often receive names connected to renewal, growth, and new beginnings that reflect the agricultural awakening that defines community life and spiritual understanding of seasonal cycles. Names like May, April, or Rose connect daughters to the productive seasons that sustain family, economic life, and community prosperity. Summer births might receive names reflecting abundance, harvest preparation, or spiritual fruitfulness that connects to intensive agricultural work and community cooperation during growing seasons. Fall births get names that reflect gratitude, harvest completion, and preparation for winter challenges that require community cooperation and family strength. Winter births receive names emphasizing endurance, faith during difficult times, and spiritual strength that sustains families through challenging seasons. These seasonal connections create lifelong associations between individuals and natural cycles that govern traditional agricultural life and spiritual understanding of divine providence. Community whispers. Name selection doesn't happen in isolation. It requires subtle community approval processes that ensure chosen names align with traditional values and avoid creating social problems or spiritual concerns within established cultural frameworks. Church leaders and extended family members provide informal guidance about name appropriateness through conversations that happen during family visits and community gatherings. Names that seem too worldly, too unusual, or too connected to outside cultural influences receive gentle discouragement without direct criticism. Community feedback considers how chosen names will sound during church services, community gatherings, and daily interactions that require appropriate dignity and spiritual reflection. Names that might create pronunciation difficulties or cultural confusion within Pennsylvania Dutch-speaking communities receive careful evaluation. The approval process includes consideration of current community name usage to avoid excessive duplication that might create confusion during church services, community meetings, and family gatherings that require clear identification of individuals. Balance between honoring family traditions and maintaining community clarity becomes important for successful name selection that serves both family heritage and community harmony. Hidden messages. Every chosen name carries specific meanings that reflect family hopes, spiritual aspirations, and community values, rather than simply following popular culture trends or personal preferences that might conflict with traditional expectations. Name meanings receive careful consideration through consultation with older family members who understand traditional interpretations and spiritual significance that might not appear in modern name dictionaries or popular culture. References. Biblical name meanings take precedence over cultural associations that developed outside traditional religious contexts. Family discussions about name meanings include consideration of how chosen names will influence the child's spiritual development and community relationships throughout her lifetime. Names associated with pride, worldliness, or inappropriate spiritual qualities receive rejection regardless of their popularity in outside communities. Traditional interpretations sometimes differ from modern meanings, with family elders providing guidance about authentic spiritual significance versus contemporary cultural associations that might conflict with traditional values. The meaning selection process includes prayer and spiritual consideration about appropriate qualities to emphasize through name choice. Middle names often carry additional meanings that complement first name significance, creating combined meanings that reflect comprehensive family hopes and spiritual aspirations for the child's future development and community contribution within traditional frameworks. Regional secrets. Different Amish settlements across the country have developed distinct naming customs that reflect local traditions, regional influences, and community-specific practices while maintaining core spiritual principles and family heritage connections. Pennsylvania communities maintain the strictest adherence to traditional European naming patterns, emphasizing biblical names and family heritage connections that preserve original settlement traditions and cultural identity. These communities resist modern naming trends most strongly while preserving authentic traditional practices. Ohio settlements show slightly more variation in name selection, incorporating some American influences while maintaining traditional spiritual foundations and family pattern requirements. Regional agricultural differences sometimes influence seasonal name associations and community celebration patterns. Midwest communities have developed unique combinations of traditional and regional influences, creating naming patterns that reflect local community development while preserving essential spiritual meanings and family connection requirements. Geographic isolation sometimes preserves naming customs that disappeared from other regions. Western settlements often adapt traditional naming customs to local conditions while maintaining spiritual foundations and community approval processes that ensure appropriate cultural preservation. Climate differences, agricultural patterns, and community development influence regional variations in seasonal naming and community celebration customs. Understanding regional differences helps families navigate naming decisions when they move between communities or maintain connections across different settlements while preserving authentic traditional practices and spiritual foundations. Family records. Amish communities maintain careful records of naming patterns, family heritage, and community traditions through systems that preserve cultural information while protecting privacy and maintaining appropriate community control over cultural documentation and family history preservation. Family Bible records include detailed naming information that connects individuals to spiritual heritage, biblical references, and family spiritual development through generations of careful documentation that preserves authentic cultural transmission while maintaining family privacy and spiritual significance. Community church records maintain naming information that connects individuals to religious instruction, spiritual development, and church discipline, while preserving community membership information and spiritual accountability that supports traditional religious practices and community spiritual life. Oral tradition preservation ensures that naming customs, spiritual meanings, and cultural practices continue through generations despite limited written documentation that might create security concerns or cultural vulnerability to outside interference and misunderstanding. Elder women maintain detailed knowledge of community naming patterns through informal networks that preserve cultural information while protecting community privacy and maintaining appropriate cultural boundaries that prevent outside exploitation of traditional practices and spiritual customs. Regional record coordination ensures that naming customs remain consistent across different Amish settlements while preserving local variations and community-specific traditions that reflect particular settlement history and spiritual development within broader traditional frameworks. The record-keeping systems balance cultural preservation needs with privacy protection and community security concerns that prevent outside access to sensitive cultural information while ensuring authentic traditional transmission across generations of community development. Modern challenges include adapting traditional record-keeping to legal requirements while preserving community control over cultural information and maintaining appropriate privacy boundaries that protect family heritage and community spiritual life from outside interference. Modern pressures, contemporary legal requirements, social changes, and cultural pressures create challenges for traditional Amish naming customs, while communities work to preserve authentic practices within modern American society that doesn't always understand or accommodate traditional cultural practices and religious requirements. Legal documentation requirements sometimes conflict with traditional naming customs, creating challenges when official records don't reflect community naming practices or when government requirements compromise cultural privacy and traditional record keeping that preserves community autonomy and cultural authenticity. Outside cultural influences affect younger generation attitudes toward traditional naming, while communities work to maintain cultural transmission and authentic practice preservation despite social pressures that encourage accommodation to mainstream American naming trends and cultural patterns. Medical and educational system interactions require navigation of naming differences while protecting traditional privacy and maintaining appropriate cultural boundaries that preserve community control over cultural information and family heritage documentation. Technology influences create new challenges for maintaining traditional naming privacy while adapting to modern communication needs that require official documentation and public interaction that didn't exist during traditional community development. Community leadership addresses modern challenges through careful adaptation that preserves essential traditional elements while making necessary accommodations for legal compliance and social interaction that enables continued community survival and cultural preservation within changing American society.